11 o'clock on your Thursday morning. Welcome in. It is now time for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, along with you here as we navigate through this. It feels like it's been a really long week. I mentioned this earlier that Monday feels like it was a month ago since Kingston was let go, and we've been on this search ever since. And now we're kind of in that weird wait-and-see kind of holding pattern to see what eventually comes up with who the next head coach is going to be, hopefully by the time the week's out. But, I guess the announcement can come at any time, right?
Yeah, for sure. And, I think, guys, lots of Gamecock fans giving their opinions on where they think this thing is going. Lots of fans giving their opinion on where they don't want it to go.
Right.
And so it's been an exciting time. It's been an interesting time. And hopefully, though, there'll be – I feel pretty comfortable saying there will be more movement sooner rather than later.
Sure thing. And somebody that's been paying close attention to it, as we all have, is our guy Mike Uva from Gamecock Central. Mike, appreciate your time this morning as he joins us on the Love Chevrolet phone lines. What's been your perspective on the dialogue and everything we've been hearing about this coaching search so far this week?
I think the biggest thing that I've took away from it all is the majority of the coaches that South Carolina, and I'm sure you guys have talked about it throughout the week, the majority of the coaches that they're targeting, it's a much different circumstance in comparison to where it was a couple of years ago when they were trying to replace the role of Chad Holbrook, because the majority of those coaches, their seasons are over. A couple of years back when they were going through the coaching search, some of those coaches they were still interested in were still in the NCAA tournament. So that's why I know from obviously what Wes and Chris have been saying throughout the week, on top of what they've been posting on Gamecock Central and the things that I've been hearing as well, this should not take that long. I would be shocked if we're here, middle of next week and it's not all but wrapped up. I think we could hear something over the next couple of days.
Mike, how important do you think it is in 2024? Not that you want to rush. You obviously never want to rush with something like this. You have to get it right. And we all know we don't have to go into all the pressures on the administration right now from the fans to get it right, because it is what it is. But how important do you think it is to get it right, but also do it in an efficient manner, just because of the transfer portal? And luckily for South Carolina, this hasn't been a situation. I think you got to credit Monty Lee a little bit there. It hasn't been a situation where everybody just, boom, hit the portal after the firing and everybody's gone. But also the other side of that, Mike, is I'm looking, Florida just picked up a middle infield commitment from a guy that's batting 400 or something. And I think you look around, everybody else is hitting the portal and recruiting. And so there, as always, is a time crunch. But I think certainly in the NIL transfer portal world we are in, it gets created a little bit more of a time crunch, I think.
No, I certainly think there is something to it. The only thing that I would say about that, though, Wes, is, and I've seen the stuff that you've been putting out, and I agree with you, but the only thing that I would say is I feel like in the era that we're living in now, it's easy to be able to bring players in now via the portal, and we've seen it happen in basketball. Obviously, it's apples to oranges when you're comparing it to a sport like that, but where I'm trying to get at is you can be able to quickly build your program. I think the thing that's scary, though, is the longer that you wait, now you're worried about how it could impact you in the future years, talking about players that aren't even here. Now, obviously, there's going to be some players that South Carolina has recruited for the last couple of years, whether it be this upcoming 2025 class, whether it be 26, 27. We know with baseball, some of these kids are getting talked to friggin' in 8th grade, freshman year of high school. So certainly you want to be able to get the ball rolling, because the longer you wait, I think that more than anything is going to impact your program down the road. Now, depending on who they bring in, if it's a coach from a different school, and they've been talking to some of these players over the last couple of years that they've been trying to recruit out of the high school ranks, yes, obviously those relationships can help. I think more than anything, though, if you're some of these players, yeah, you're interested in trying to figure out, okay, what's my future going to be? But at the same time, too, I think if this is done, as long as this doesn't drag out into next week, as long as we're not here next Thursday, next Friday, I think everything will be okay as far as that goes. But, obviously there'll probably be a player or two that decides to enter the portal, because that's part of, the era that we're living in now.
Yeah, Mike, what do you think of the idea that, and this is kind of how I think I feel right now, I think it's easier than ever to build, if you're a new coach, to build a team in our current era, like you were just talking about. If you have some excitement and you have the portal and I think you can sell kind of you can sell the unknown in that, hey, everything's fresh, everything's new. You're in the honeymoon stage, so your fans are excited, and so you can sell all that, and so it's easier than ever. We saw that at Georgia this past year. But then I think the other side of that, I think it's harder than ever to consistently build that winner like we saw when Ray Tanner was at the helm and they were making the tournament. I mean, literally every single year. Like it was considered a down year. It was considered a surprise if they were not hosting a regional. And so, I think the expectations do have to shift just a little bit overall when you look at all those pressures of keeping your guys on your roster once you do get them. The SEC is deeper and more difficult than ever. I just think it affects kind of my expectations for any coaching staff, not just South Carolina, because there is so much turnover from year to year.
Two things you said that really stood out to me. One, consistently, right? Being able to consistently be able to put that type of product out there, especially if you're going to try to take advantage of using the transfer portal, right? I mean, we saw that in basketball. That was great for USC. And obviously they had some guys coming back. They've been able to take advantage of the portal. It's just tricky to be able to consistently do that. And that's not to say Lamont Paris and the Gamecocks can't do that, or any team in the country, but it's that added pressure, right? I mean, because it's not like you're continuing to build on the blocks where guys come in their freshman year, sophomore year, whatever the case may be for any sport. Now you have to re-recruit your team every year. And if you're going into the portal, yes, you could hit big, but kind of like, letting it roll on the roulette table, sometimes you might miss. I mean, it's just part of it. The other thing you said, and I don't know if you necessarily agree with this, or Tyler, you guys agree with this, but the more I've thought about it, especially with the additions, and even before Texas and Oklahoma coming in next year, as difficult as it is to play in the SEC for football, I'd argue playing in the SEC for baseball is even that much tougher. And when you look at what South Carolina has done, I actually went back, and my math skills, as you know, guys, it's not the best, so bear with me if I'm off a number or two. But if you go back over the 33 seasons that South Carolina has been in the SEC, and you take away the years in which Ray Tanner was coaching the Gamecocks, the majority of the time, South Carolina, they haven't had success in the SEC from a win-loss standpoint. The reason I bring that up is not to crap on the history of South Carolina baseball. I'll be able to upset the Gamecock baseball purists real easy by saying that.
Mike,
but
way to go.
Whatever, no Christmas card for me this year. But the point is, it's a challenge. It's difficult. It's not easy to go over 500 consistently in that conference. Now, that's not to say South Carolina should go into each season and be like, well, if we get to 500, that's great. But it's just to further prove just how challenging it is to get through that conference. So I think whoever you bring in here, certainly I understand the expectations that this fan base has. Because when you do the things that Ray Tanner and that era was able to do, this fan base is naturally hungry. I mean, I see it being a Patriot fan. People want to get back. You look at with the Dallas Cowboys. You can go across sports, not just in college baseball. But it is going to be a challenge. It is going to be a challenge when you add in Oklahoma and Texas. Those aren't two cupcake teams coming in. So, yeah, consistently being able to do it year in, year out, especially with using the portal, is going to be tough, but especially in that conference, which, again, I think is even tougher than going through the football slate.
Again, talking to Mike Uva from Gamecock Central, that's a really good point you bring up, and perhaps the SEC's never been as tough as it has been this year, where they set a record by putting 11 teams in the NCAA tournament. Still some teams in the mix to potentially win the national championship here in a couple weeks. In your opinion, is that why it is so important to make a home run hire this time around, so you don't risk falling further and further down in the pecking order over the next 3 or 4 years if you get the wrong guy?
I think it goes without saying, right? I mean, just like anything in life, if you continue to just have to replace a coach every 3, 4, 5 years, it's going to be a challenge. We talk about the transfer portal. Certainly you can hit. Certainly you could bring a coach in. I know people don't want to hear it, but you look in the upstate, they make a coaching change, and what happens? They're going to the supers for the first time in a long time. So things can happen like that, but they can also quickly be on the other side of things. So I think, obviously, you want to be able to find some type of continuity, and if you're able to find continuity, especially in this era, and you're able to build those relationships, you hope that will be able to not only create success, but you'll be able to sustain it a little bit easier in comparison to having to worry about, okay, roster could be turning over. bringing in a new coach every couple of years, that consistency that we talked about before, certainly it's important to be able to have that same head coach there.
Mike, I got to say the most polarizing conversation I've seen among South Carolina fans, I don't want to say in a long, long time, because there's always a polarizing conversation, it seems like. But the most recent convo of the day obviously involves Monty Lee and sort of the back and forth on would you ever hire a guy that was fired by Clemson versus the fact that he's so well respected in the state of South Carolina, especially among the high school coaches out there and the people that are really kind of what I call baseball heads. So, Mike, where do you sort of stand on this Monty Lee just conversation that's been really consistent over the last 48 hours?
Well, I saw something the other day, and it kind of stood out to me. That when you go back and you look at coaches that have been at other places before, and you want to judge them just based on that, I get it. You know, there's certainly cases like that. But at the same time, too, if that were the case, a guy named, I don't know, Nick Saban, when he went 34-24-1 his first year at Michigan State, which is for you non-math whizzes out there, that winning percentage is at .585. If people didn't think he was going to be a good college football coach, he wouldn't have had the chance to go to LSU. He wouldn't have had the chance to go to Alabama and become arguably the greatest college football coach of all time. So I bring that up, certainly, again, tough to compare two different sports like that. But the whole point being is Monty definitely did some good things at Clemson. And just kind of like with the Kingston era to an extent, people want to be like, oh, he failed. He failed why? He failed because he didn't get to, Omaha. He didn't get to supers enough. He got into supers twice. But honestly, obviously you want to be able to create that consistency that we're talking about, so you're changing things up. I get that. Who's to say Lee can't get over the hump, right? Oh, because they brought a new coach in and, he did it his first year at Clemson. Well, guess what? The majority of those players were guys that Lee recruited. So I think this notion that it would be, I think some people have called it a lazy hire, like Muschamp 2.0. I think that's just nonsense. Because, again, Lee has proven that he is a good coach. He just wasn't able to get over the hump. He gets over the hump a couple times over there. Now we're talking about a completely different story because of the success that he was able to have in the regular season. So if he comes on in, we know what the players think. We know what recruits feel about him. We know what the impact he can have, especially in-state. And I know fans always pound their chest about saying that Kingston didn't do enough to recruit in-state players. We know he can make an impact there. But I truly think that Lee is not one of these coaches, for whatever reason, people just think, oh, he failed. Come on. You want to talk about lazy stuff? That's a lazy take.
Well, we're anxiously awaiting what the decision is going to be. Hopefully we get it before the end of the week. And like I said, hopefully we're not still talking about this next week, because that would certainly be a problem. Got more things to get into with you, Mike, including Nick Harbor's aspirations for making the Olympic team. We'll dive into that coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs on your Thursday here on The Game.